There's an ancient Chinese money rule that has been passed down from generation to generation, and it was only recently that I uncovered just how far it dates back. Now, this was a money tip that I learned from my dad, who was one of the main inspirations for me to start this channel in the first place, and I wanted to share this money tip with you today. Being a Chinese American, I feel like the values of saving and tracking my money have been passed down to me. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but it's true. And in this video, I want to reveal not only what the ancient money rule is, but how you can use it practically to save your first or maybe your next $10,000. According to CEIC macroeconomic data, China has a gross personal savings rate of 44.3% of GDP, nearly 2.5 times higher than the savings rates of both the United States and the United Kingdom. And while researching for this video, I discovered a publication from 1989 where the author details the historical Chinese accounting practices. By pure coincidence, there was a method within the paper that I unknowingly have been practicing since I was a teen, one that my family passed down. It's a technique called the 4-column accounting method, and this method that we're talking about today actually traces its origins back to the Tang dynasty, which reigned from 618 to 907 AD. That would make this money principle over 1400 years old. Now, if you're looking for just exactly how to use this 4-column method, I will leave a timestamp down below so you can just skip to it. But if you want to understand the exact reasons the Chinese are able to save so much and how you can save more money too, it's helpful to understand the why. Chinese people are, in my opinion, really good at saving money for a few key reasons. The first are Confucian values. So Confucius, if you've ever heard of him, was a Chinese philosopher who lived around 500 BC. He created a system of moral and social philosophies that became so influential that his teachings were actually adopted by the Chinese government for over 2,000 years. The core principles that he taught were number 1, frugality, number 2, self-discipline, and number 3, thinking long-term rather than seeking immediate gratification. And if you know anything about the traits of wealthy people, these are very similar traits that they also incorporate. These principles were literally taught in schools at the time. They were then positively enforced by the Chinese government. And after thousands of years, that's basically how these ideologies have been passed down. So a couple of the ideas are, for example, the fact that you should save first and then spend your money later, so you're always paying yourself first. And number 2, you should always have some emergency reserves. Both of these in Chinese culture actually trace back to Confucian teachings about living a virtuous life. The second reason why Chinese people are so good at saving money, I think, has to do with family dynamics. There's often an expectation of the younger generation to help support their parents as they get older, and it's not uncommon for Chinese kids to live with their parents even in adult age. These dynamics make it so that perhaps if you are a kid growing up in China, or perhaps a Chinese American kid like me, you might want to save a little bit of extra money because you know that someday you're going to have to provide for your parents who are going to retire maybe somewhat soon. And the third top reason why I think Chinese people are so good at saving money is they simply prioritize education. So if you are from an immigrant family, usually education is one of those highly emphasized things that your parents care a lot about growing up because they think that the key to success is going to be going to a good college and then getting a good job. While that's an entirely different topic for another video, oftentimes my point here is that families are going to try to save a lot of money in preparation for tuition expenses, and that's kind of what you're going to see. So these are some of the main intrinsic reasons why the Chinese are so into saving, but what is the ancient 4-column accounting method and how does it work? The 4-column method is a simple formula where you take your beginning balance at the start of the month, then you add your increases, so your income and your side hustle money, and then you subtract any decreases. So these are all your expenses, and then the last final column or the box is for your ending balance. Now, I know that this looks and might sound pretty simple, and that's because it is, and that's the beauty. It should be really simple to save and budget your money on your way to your first 10K or maybe your next 10K. This type of method is also really closely related to the zero-based budgeting system. That's where you project out and forecast every single dollar before the month begins. But the reason why the 4-column accounting method is different and much more powerful is that it forces you to account for every single dollar. The 4-column method then is more of an accounting/tracking system after your money has been spent. And the reason why it's better, in my opinion, is that you literally cannot lie to yourself about where your money went. After you figure out where your money goes using this method, you will then use everything that you've learned about your previous month of spending to inform your next month of behavior. So let me give you an example. Let's pretend you are in your second job out of college and you make $5,000 a month after tax. You start with a beginning balance of $8,000 in your checking account, so your first column would be $8,000 in this case. In your second column, these are your increases. So perhaps you make the $5,000 of after-tax salary, you make $800 freelancing, you have $120 in investment dividends, and you sell some stuff on Facebook Marketplace this month for $200. That means your second column totals are $6,120 for the month. The third column is where it gets a little bit interesting. These are your decreases for the month. So in this column, you might track all of your expenses and your spending might look like the following. For your necessities, you're spending $2,800 total, so $2,600 on rent and $200 on utilities like electricity and the internet. For your transportation, you're spending $870 a month between your car payment, gas, insurance, and parking. Then you might spend $850 on food, broken up between $500 on groceries and $350 on eating out, getting coffee, or lunches. You then spend another $800 on entertainment or perhaps the gym membership, clothing, golf, yoga classes, etc. And lastly, you have a credit card balance that you need to pay off every single month. It's $400 a month. And then you have a student loan payment of $500 and a personal loan that you owe $200 a month on. If you add up this entire column of expenses, these amount to $6,470. That means in the fourth column, your ending balance is $7,700, or basically you spent $300 more than you earned this month while saving absolutely nothing. So if you were using this 4-column accounting method, you could easily visually see that you are probably living paycheck to paycheck, or you might have to go into more debt this month than you just had previously. This will force you to look at your expenses on the categories where you can cut back, and it creates accountability for you because you want to see your ending balance be higher than your beginning balance at the end of the month. And the nice part about this method is that it gives you an easy way to match up what your bank balance actually reflects at the end of the month and what your own accounting came up with. If you are off in any way, that means you perhaps didn't do the accounting correctly, and it forces you to take a look at your expenses or perhaps your income again. Now, the nice part about this method is that you don't have to start this on the first of every month. Whatever date you are watching this right now, you could start today. If you're really hardcore about this, you could look back at your last 3 months of credit card and bank statements, you add up everything and see what your beginning and ending balances would have been for the last 3 months. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. That might take you a lot of work. It might take you an afternoon of work, but I believe that if you were to go through this exercise, you would learn a lot about your own spending habits, and it would force you to uncomfortably look at the things that you actually might be spending money on. Now, this is a very practical method to save money, but sometimes personal finance is about the behaviors and the principles that you live out day to day. Those can also help you build wealth too. So I wanted to share with you 3 main factors and behaviors that help the Chinese prioritize saving money that you can essentially copy. The first is that the majority of Chinese people don't like to show off. Of course, you're gonna have some of these crazy rich Asian types showing off their Gucci bags and their Bottega Veneta, whatever that brand is called. But in general, a lot of Chinese people that are wealthy, they like to keep a low profile. That usually means that they're gonna be a lot happier with the things that they already have. Oftentimes, I don't think we are grateful enough for the basic necessities that we might have, such as a bed to sleep in, access to food, or access to clean water. There are so many countries out there that lack these basic resources, and by keeping a humble and low profile, we can kind of simply look at our life and be appreciative of what we actually have. Famously, in a study in 1978, there were lottery winners that reported being similarly happy before and after winning the lottery. The findings showed that having a large monetary gain had no effect on their levels of happiness in the long term. Sure, they might have had a huge spike in dopamine levels as well as their happiness in the weeks after they won the lottery, but after a year or two, it didn't really make them happier. They just simply got used to having more money, and their happiness levels returned to their baseline. The second behavior that you can copy in your own life is that when Chinese people earn their money, their goal is to usually live off a smaller percentage of what they just made and to save the remainder. When I saved $10,000 using this method, my whole goal was to have a savings rate closer to 50% or perhaps 40% of my income. I knew that if I were able to live off a lower amount, I would keep my lifestyle inflation in check and also build up my savings quite quickly. Now compare that savings rate of, let's say, even 25% to the average American who saves 5% or maybe even at most 10% of their income every month. Or even worse, compare it to the average American who has too big of a car payment and lives paycheck to paycheck. I think if you can be disciplined enough to live off a smaller percentage of your income within reason, it can save you a lot of money. There are going to be some exceptions to this rule. So for example, if you aren't making enough money where you can't even save, then you perhaps need to work on your income first. However, my point here is that the 4-column accounting method can hopefully assist you with optimizing what you are already making and spending. And the third behavioral factor why the Chinese are so good with money is that a lot of Chinese people are what I like to call value-based spenders. What I mean by that is that they're always trying to get the most value for their dollar. This value-based spending ties back to Confucian values of frugality, but it could also show up in what's called necessary spending versus face spending. And no, I'm not talking about great skincare, although that is technically part of, spending money on your face. But in Chinese culture, face spending would refer to social status, so spending money to either maintain or boost it, and that's not always practical. Chinese people like to spend their money on necessities, so the things that really matter, like education, health, property, and family. But when it comes to wants, they may still buy something that they ultimately want, but they want to make sure that they get a good value or good deal out of it. Basically, Chinese people don't like getting ripped off. I mean, who does? So there you have it. You know everything about me now. Those are all my secrets. So if you enjoyed this video, check out this video on my channel right here. This is about the 4 numbers you need to track to be a millionaire. And honestly, if you knew these 4 numbers, you will be on track to be a millionaire. So I will see you guys in that video or a future one on the channel. Thank you for being here. Bye.